It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to figure out that covering oneself up from head to toe in the name of a religious diktat or a religious dogma is against one's freedom of right and expression and even a violation of one's fundamental rights. But it has been made into a rocket science by the leftists and the feminists in India, in the West, and all across the globe by saying that it's in fact a Muslim woman's freedom to cover up if their religion commands it. It's obviously bad, there is no doubt about that. If wearing a medieval gown was unhygienic, then definitely wearing a burqa or a niqab is unhygienic. Then there is the issue of comfort, especially in the heat or in summer or when you go outside in the sun. You are not able to move or even properly see through the niqab or the burqa. There is actually a Taliban hostage in 2008 who had to wear a niqab to get out and be transferred from one place to another, and he had to squint his eyes through this veil to see the world. So there is definitely infringement on movement and on availability of your surroundings and your environment when you are inside one of these things. And obviously the basic psychology or the basic human behavior of having to see somebody. If you want to hold a conversation with somebody, or if you want to understand somebody, empathize with somebody, you need to see their face, and you need to have these non-verbal gestures and cues. It's pretty basic psychology here, which are all denied to a woman inside a veil. And then there is alienation, objectification, the list goes on and on. But the basic issue with covering up for a Muslim woman is the religious diktat or the religious why behind it. Why should Muslim women cover up in the first place? Why does their religion demand it? Two reasons you may know. One is identification, that is, Muslim believing women were asked to cover themselves up to distinguish themselves from the non-Muslim women or the slave women. So if you're a Muslim, you covered yourself up, which made you unavailable to men, especially Muslim men. But if you're not covered up, if you showed your face, or if you showed your figure, then it means that I don't have to spell it out. If you know the history of Islam, then you would know where that would lead to. And second is an issue of safety, because Muslim women or women had to go out into very unsafe environments where there are a lot of predatory men. And if somebody sees you, then they can get attracted to you, which would lead to different kinds of sins, be it adultery or be it objectification, be it sexual crimes. So to avoid all kinds of the sins of the eyes or the sins of the flesh, it is advisable for women to just cover up the stuff so that they wouldn't entice men and preventing them from doing bad stuff to you. It's just protection. Now, if you just take the religious part out of the equation, or the Islamic part out of the equation, if it was not something pertaining to the Islamic religion, then it would be pretty simple to know how bad or how misogynistic and objectifying and sexualizing this argument is towards women. And in fact, up until the late 1980s and 1990s, feminists and the women, at least the women in the left, knew that this was a bad idea to cover up or to wear niqab or even to endorse hijab and those kinds of religious coverings. So feminists up until then did oppose and reject hijab. Then why is it changed today? Now the West, which also includes the feminist movement in the West, really came face to face with the Islamic ideology or Sharia law only after the 9/11. And there are all these reasons we all know. The first one is the ignorance of the secular left, about what Islamic ideology really is and how it really wants to treat women and other minorities in any place where Sharia law is established as a religious dogma or as a form of government. Then there is the anti establishment ethos, where feminism or any left movement is against everything Western, modern, capitalistic, and white Christian or the majoritarian ideas or culture of the land. So, if the establishment says that Sharia law is bad, you just oppose it just because they told you that it is bad. There is no other reason. And call them fascist and majoritarian and dogmatic or whatever else, just because it's the establishment that's telling you something. And lastly, it's all about multiculturalism. That is, in a multicultural nation or a nation that invites immigrants in. Multiculturalism means that you have to also actively learn the other people's culture and learn to be sensitive about the differences that they bring in with them from their own culture. So, in the name of multiculturalism, people are asked to bend a lot of rules or to bend their own perception in a way that is accommodating to the cultures coming in, whether or not it suits with your own ideas, your own culture, or your own national values and identity. But honestly, that doesn't explain everything that's going on with the covering up or the hijab issue, because the same arguments are brought even in places where immigration is not that great or immigrants are not changing the cultural fabric of the place. Universally, now feminists are saying that Muslim women should cover up, or they are supporting these extremist, fundamentalist forms of Islam, no matter the culture or no matter the civilization they belong to. And most importantly, how can feminism, a movement for women's rights, allow or support something so overtly anti-woman? Why can't they just educate themselves on it? Why can't just they look at the sources and look at the academic writings, if they exist, and discern that this is against the freedom and rights of women and fight it? Well, that is where the failure of modern feminism really stares back at you. To address that further, I really need to go back to an anecdote from my own personal experience when I was also a left leaning feminist. And I was a devout feminist who subscribed and supported all the left leaning, secular, liberal feminist ways of thinking and ideas or attitudes. That was, I was pretty brainwashed. Well, let's leave it at that. So I remember reading an article in, I think it was Guardian or BBC or CNN or some of those really liberal media outlets. So in that article, there was this Western woman, probably British or an American, going and interviewing the Muslim women in the Arab countries and trying to understand why they prefer to cover up. And the logic given was that Western women or the modern women like to show their cleavage. It's just part of the culture. We don't frown upon that. We don't find it really bad, or it's cultural. It's part of the culture. It's just a fashion statement, or it's the same, a cultural thing for the Arab Muslim women to cover themselves up, to wear this very fashionable, very majestic, really elevating, spiritually and culturally elevating hijab or veil or burqa or whatever. So there are different types of expression of womanhood all across the globe. There are some people who like to show their cleavage. There are some people who like to cover themselves up. There are some people who just like to cover their hair. So it's just different types of expressions. And we, as multicultural, as open-minded, as cosmopolitan, universally thinking we need to appreciate all forms of these expressions without question or without judgment. it was one article that really changed my perspective of thinking about covering up or putting a veil on you as a Muslim woman. And honestly, even I wanted to try it close to that period because I wanted that experience of how covering up or knowing the world from inside a hijab really is. Wearing a deep neckline is same as wearing a hijab. That is being sensuous or being outwardly with how you present yourself is the same, is equal to covering up or to completely putting yourself inside multiple layer of clothing to not be seen by men or by unwanted gaze. There is a ridiculous amount of false equivalence and logical fallacies tied together and beaded together in such a way that nothing makes sense anymore if you are a left leaning feminist, because everything is one thing, huge, inclusive, accepting, universal, cosmopolitan world where anything and everything goes until you don't know who you are, what you are, where you identify, nothing. That is following communism and the Gramscian way of thinking. Everything is deconstructed to its parts. Everything is stripped down of its value, its meaning, its very spirit or essence, so that everything starts to look the same to a feminist or to a leftist. To find equivalence between not wearing clothes and covering yourself up. They're both the same. Both are expressions of womanhood. And then what is womanhood? Well, what is a woman? We don't know because we have stripped womanhood itself of its identity and its meaning and its value. And then we have reduced the value of what a child is, what a baby is, what birth is, what consumption, what conceiving of our life is. Therefore, we don't know when life starts. We don't know if we should keep the baby or kill the baby. And this dissolution of any cultural, ideological, value-based system that has caused so much chaos in the way that feminists or left liberals now think, which breeds confusion. And in that chaos and confusion, you really need people to tell you what to think, because you don't know what is right and wrong. You don't know what something its value is, its meaning is. You need to be coddled and you need to be reaffirmed on your own thoughts and your own value system constantly by an outside force, because you have lost the idea to conceptualize, to conceive, and to analyze anything in a coherent way, because everything is reduced to its atoms. Feminists and left liberals and secular people are all under the hegemony, and they are all basically slaves to these masters who tell them, who dictate them what to think, and how to act and behave. Be it the communists, the Islamists, or any other power centers that they have to listen to now. What do you think about feminism and left liberalism now supporting the jihadi Islamist movement across the globe and using them to really subdue the rights and privileges of women today? If you like this video, please hit the like button or share it to somebody who might want to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe. Until we meet next time, bye bye and have an awesome time.